Well, welcome back, everybody. I don't know about you, but I let out this like big sigh because I literally was in a rush for transition. You know how it is when you're trying to get to the porta potty so that you don't waste any time. Because again, my garment was on, so I had to make it quick and make it fast. And then try to make a smoothie. I mean, I did okay. It came out pretty green, but listen, it was a lot happening in that last 10 minutes. But I hope you got what you needed to get ready for our next session, which is with Cesar Argueta, who is the president of Tri Latino Triathlon Club, a New York based not for profit endurance sports organization. He oversees all facets of the business, whose mission whose mission is to generate awareness and increase the number of Latinos and people of color in triathlons. Outside of his work for the TL, Cesar is a multicultural expert and online marketing technology consultant to the global Fortune 100 companies. Ms. Michelle Mendoza is the vice president of Tri Latino Triathlon Club, overseeing growth and management, pricing, and messaging for the club, a not for profit endurance organization aimed to empower Latinos and people of color to live healthy lifestyles throughout affordable fitness in New York City metro area. In addition to volunteering her time with Tri Latino, she is a seasoned food and consumer marketing industry leader with expertise in multicultural marketing, strategic communication framework, and brand management. We are about to start creating a diverse and inclusive environment. Cesar and Michelle, take it away.
Great. Hi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. 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 Just for technical purposes, can you see the presentation?
We're good.
Great.
Right,
Thank you. Thank you so much for that intro. So as you said, hold on. Let me make sure that this clicker is working here. One second. Just bear with us.
We do it this way. Go ahead, click.
Okay, let's see here. Apologies, just want to make sure that we have all this taken care of. Okay, there you go. All right. So apologies for that. As always, there's some technical glitches, so we just want to make sure we work through them. I'm Cesar Argueta, president of Tri Latino, and
I'm Michelle Mendoza, vice president of Tri Latino.
Great. And as you mentioned.
Yep. So Tri Latino, we are, so to reemphasize, we are a 501c3, a non-for-profit. We introduce Latinos and people of color to the sport of triathlons and endurance sports. Our goal, really, our mission is to uplift our community and to continue to live in these healthy lifestyles. So that's who Tri Latino is in a very short nutshell.
Right. And we are so thankful for the opportunity to Megan and USAC for this opportunity to be able to talk to you today about what we're doing to create an inclusive culture. So this is a very great opportunity and interesting exercise. I think that we've been fortunate enough that we have a lot of experience in creating an inclusive culture. And as we had to go back to try to figure out what that was, we almost had to go back to the beginning. And so if we could distill it into a framework, it would look a little bit something like this. It's 4 steps about what it really takes to create an inclusive environment. First and foremost, I know it's going to sound cliche-ish, but leadership is our first pillar. And this really comes from the fact that our co-founder, brainchild, Adele Borrero, really was at the heart of wanting to create a diverse environment. His story really is about wanting to have and see other people in the sport of triathlon. As a matter of fact, he was also a mentor in another triathlon group, and that's why he had the ability to talk to other people about his vision and bring them along with him. So they wanted to see other people that were just like him, but he was already in a critical leadership position. The second part of it is creating a welcoming environment. And what we're going to also talk about, and we'll go into more tangible examples in each one of these pillars. But for the second pillar, it's really about creating a welcoming and opening environment. It's critically important. We'll show you some of what we're doing. Third is really uplifting the community. It's what we're doing to encourage one another and also encourage other members of the sports community. And then last but not least, all of this is centered around the shared mindset of healthy living.
So let's get into it. Perhaps it's because of our culture, our ethnicity, or maybe even our language. We do have an advantage, and that is the advantage of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because with that, it's in our DNA. It's who we are, and we're going to show you how we bring it to life in our day-to-day training and the way that we interact with one another.
Right. And so to go back to that first pillar of leadership, as the president of Tri-Latino, I'm extremely fortunate to not only work with Michelle, but a diverse spectrum of in our board. And I am so happy to say that our board members are female. And it is extremely important. I think from the beginning, from its inception, our co-founder really wanted females involved in the sport and also in the administration of the club. And as you can see, we have a wide variety of Black and Brown perspective. We have voices that represent the Black community, the Caribbean community, and also Latino voices from the different areas. Because if you know about Latino culture, we're extremely diverse. Everything from South America, Central America, and even North America, so much diversity, so much nuances. And so really the board and the leadership, it's critical to creating this environment of not just diversity, but also inclusivity, because they also represent our membership.
Part of our leadership is also our coaching. Without the coaching, we wouldn't be in the sport, right? So our coaching has always had a very diverse and mixed group of people. As a matter of fact, when we first started, our head coach was also female. Then we had a head coach who was openly gay. And today we have a Latino head coach who is really a driving force behind our eclectic mix of programming for our athletes at our various skill sets. So within this group that you could see here, we have, each one of them have their respective areas of expertise. And these coaches, the question always comes up, how did you find them? How did you find such amazing coaches for Tri-Latino? Well, some of them have been referrals. Others have literally approached us because they found us online through social. And then others have actually been homegrown. So whether it's networking or promoting from within, cultivating it from within, this is how we come across our amazing group of coaches. So for our members, part of the leadership is also giving back, right? And there is that ability to mentor. So we have a youth program where our adult members are actively involved in the mentoring of these youth. I will talk about this program a little bit more in the presentation.
Great. So now let's go back to that second pillar. What do we do to create a welcoming environment, right? I know a lot of what we're going to talk about sounds very counterintuitive. It's almost like, very simple, but it really is simple because at the beginning, it starts with just even having this environment. So again, one of the things that our co-founder talks about a lot is no question is a dumb question. And I think by just even making this statement, no question is a dumb question, really opens up the doors for this two-way communication. I know while we're just talking about triathlons, this permeates through every area, right? Because no question is a dumb question when it comes to any single discipline, any single thing of, athletic level or ability. And it's something that, like Michelle was saying, it doesn't just start at the leadership, it carries through the coaches and through even our mentorship, right? So at any level, coaches are always encouraging. Do you have questions for me? Ask me questions. Do you have questions of the board? Ask them questions. And even at our mentorships, when we're mentoring the juniors program, it's all about asking questions. So again, just having the ability to ask questions really does create this open environment of two-way communication.
There's another factor, and that is that we celebrate our differences. So how do we bring those celebrations to life? It could manifest itself in the way that we do a race whether it's a short distance or a long distance. It could also be in the person's own culture and what they want to share with the organization. It could be piggybacking on a national movement. We just came out of Hispanic Heritage Month, and as we look to 2021 and go into February, we will be focusing on that Black voice, on that Black experience for Black History Month. So it's a matter of celebration in all our facets and within our differences that make us one. So the next question is, how do you find yourself an ally? And this definition of ally, what is an ally? An ally is someone who doesn't need to look like you, but that needs to believe in you or in your mission and in your organization. We have a number of allies. We've been blessed to have a number of allies, and one of them in particular is Thaddeus. Thaddeus is our general counsel. Not only is he our general counsel, but Thaddeus is also a big advocate of the free market. He is an Ironman who has gone on to Kona. He has been a youth coach for our juniors program. And he doesn't look like us, but that's okay. I mean, that's part of what it is to be an ally. It is to find those people who have the resources and the knowledge to navigate those waters. So Thaddeus was actually involved in establishing the organization and ensuring that we had our designation as a 501c3 to operate as a non-for-profit.
Yeah, and it's critically important also that, that as we were talking about how to create that welcoming environment, right? This is now all about how do we find people to uplift the community, and uplifting is that part of looking for an ally. And we continue to have these allies. We still continue to have them today, which is critically important. So it was there at the foundation of the organization, and it's something that it's critically important to the success and the longevity of our organization. We have people that, while they're not on the board, are still allies, and they still help us because they critically believe in our mission. So another aspect of us just being able to also uplift the community, again, we've been very fortunate, like Michelle said, diversity, equity, and inclusion has been part of our DNA. And we're also very fortunate that we have something unique in Tri-Latino, and that is our very own rally cry. So no different than how the Marines, and I'm a Marine, no different than how the Marines say hoorah, or the Army says hua, right? Tri-Latino has muévete. So that's a strong word that encapsulates so much in there. And it's used for encouragement. Essentially, muévete means move. But beyond that, it's something that we use to encourage one another, motivate one another at training. If someone's feeling down, we're kind of like, hey, muévete. It's
Take
just
action.
Yeah, just a word that means so much. Like Absolutely. I said, it's our rally cry. And we don't just say it to one another. We actually say it to other people when they're out there racing, when we're trying to motivate, encourage others. What's interesting as some of the personal experiences has been that I've gotten some feedback, and Michelle, you'd probably know this too, but usually when we're out there for the New York City triathlon, we usually take over a corner in New York City. We have our group of professional cheerleaders, because that's another area that we really do use to motivate the community and just uplift, as that we're professional cheerleaders. But I've heard time and time again people saying, oh, Tri-Latino, I know you guys because you guys are the ones screaming and cheering and encouraging one another. So I think it's also critically important that as we talk about creating an inclusive environment, like, we should be able to encourage one another, encourage everyone, not just in our organization for the sport, but also encourage others, because it's critically important. Also, part of creating an inclusive environment really comes down to this ability of listening and taking action. This year, like every other organization, what was critically important was that we were getting all these curveballs thrown at us, and your organization, and you guys all know about it, from COVID-19 to the collapse of the economy to also Black Lives Matter, right? So many different change in priorities was really an opportunity. And this is where, again, Do you see it as an opportunity or as a challenge? We saw it as an opportunity to go back to our roots, go back to our mission, and go back to seeing why was it that we were established. And we were essentially, yes, we were established for a healthy lifestyle, but there was also this idea that Michelle talked about family first. And that's what all of this gave us an opportunity to go back and concentrate on this aspect of family first. And so I could share multiple examples, but I'll share one, for example, and we're extremely thankful to the USAT Foundation for this one, because with the economy and the hardships, many of our members found themselves in this category this year. And thanks to the grants that we received from the USAT Foundation, we were able to subsidize training for our members. So it was a critically important time, right? That maybe personally they might have felt ostracized, or maybe they might have felt like they wouldn't be able to participate in the community. But just through this ability, we were able to show them and show love, and also let them know that we still have a place for them here.
Absolutely. All right. So earlier I talked about the juniors program. So what is the juniors program? This is going back to the community and still uplifting within the environments that we live in. We have New York City youth who have no knowledge of the sport, or maybe don't have the resources to get into the sport, right? It costs money to have a bike. You may have a pair of sneakers, but do you know how to run? Have you had that level of technical training? Do you know how to swim? And by the way, we have to say that being in New York, all things come with it. You may be hearing some extra excitement given the status of the current announcement today with the elections. So with our youth, we have a program that we foster and that we bridge these kids into what is triathlons and endurance sports. It teaches them to believe in themselves. It gives them the confidence that is applied not only at school, but then carries on with them throughout their livelihood and, as they become adults and working professionals. So that is our program. In addition to that, we have, going back to this sense of welcoming and this sense of feeling like you belong, Tri-Latino, while we focus on triathlons, we do also ensure that we provide the programming for the other disciplines, because maybe you don't know how to ride a bike yet, or maybe swimming isn't your thing quite just yet. There are other ways to stay active, because remember, tying it back to our mission, it is about promoting healthy lifestyles. So when we go to program, we don't necessarily program so that it is about you doing a 140.6 or a 70.3. That's great. But we also encourage people that maybe it's the first time that you're going to run a 5K. Maybe it's the first time that you're going to do an Olympic, or just even the concept of going from a single discipline to a triathlon. We ensure that we provide the basis so that it could be single or multi-sport. So that's how we look at all of our programming. And there are many people who are not experienced, and that's just a reality of it. It is there is a high barrier of entry when it comes to triathlon, and a big portion of that is the swimming pool. So while I showed that earlier, we bridged the youth program, the youth into the sport. What do we do with the adults who never learned to swim? What do we do with the adults who have never learned to ride a bike, right? And let alone a road bike. And then we can even talk about a tri-bike. But so what we do is we have our programming for those who have their distances and their disciplines defined, but we also have programming that is affordable and that it allows people to come into the sport. So earlier, Cesar talked about how this year we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from USAT. And it's true, it helped. It helped significantly because we were able to subsidize and keep the programming that I would describe, like we take a lot of pride in saying that it is quality programming at an extremely affordable at cost price for the individual when they participate in our organization or in our club.
And I'll just share a little bit about my experience as well, because I recently took on as the presidency or the president at the beginning of the year. But I want to say that the reason I'm heavily involved and I believe in the mission is because I've also worked through all these different disciplines. Maybe I think it was like 5 years ago, I didn't know how to ride a bike, never learned how to ride a bike. 5 years ago, it was through Michelle Mendoza, who was part of the club, who made it a point to work with me. And as I became more involved in the program, I heard from other people in the community that I was sharing with them my fear and my anxiety of not knowing how to swim. And it was actually my Marine Corps friend who was also part of the program who told me that you should do the Learn to Swim program for the adults. And so it is one of these things that, you know, on a personal level, I was being challenged to battle an anxiety. But as you can see in this picture shows, is showing up to these Learn to Swims, getting that encouragement was really a foundation for me to really embrace the sport. So not just embrace the community, but embrace the sport, learn it, and be disciplined. I mean, 2 years later, I can now feel confident in saying that I don't have that anxiety. I clearly am not a professional swimmer, but I've worked through my anxiety, and it is because of this programming.
Do you want me? So if we could talk a little bit more about the education of it. So education is another driving component of our programming and how we bring this to life. So while we have these discipline trainings, we also provide clinics. We provide opportunities for people to learn even more, the safety of something, whether it's nutrition. There is an element of education that goes back to not only for race day, but how you apply that to life, how you apply that to the way that you go about something, or that you approach an open water. So it is part of our overall structure to ensure that we're providing the education needed so that you truly understand the sport as well as the discipline, as well as yourself in these environments.
Yeah, no, definitely. And education is key, right? And so, in closing, what we wanted to do was, number one, kind of show the things that we're doing within our own community to give you all a very tangible example of what you can do, right? And so we'll outline the steps in the next slide, but it really does start at two things. Number one is, ensuring your organization mirrors the national landscape. I think this is critically important, and this is one of the most important steps. But let's say you're not there yet. Maybe your organization doesn't mirror the national landscape like ours does. And again, we're extremely fortunate. So here are some steps, right, that we did in coming up with the presentation to be able to talk to you that I think is critically important for any organization. I know we've spoken a lot about triathlons, a lot about the sport, but it really can be distilled into these steps, which is number one, doing a self-audit. Like I said, in order to, this was a great opportunity. And in order to go back to understand, well, what is it? Because as Michelle said, a lot of this is already embedded into our DNA. So to better understand what we were doing, we needed to go back and do a self-audit and reflect, like, what is it that we're doing? And maybe for your organization, it could be, great, I'm doing this, or hey, maybe I'm lacking here. But just being aware of what you're doing, I think, is critically important. As I mentioned, leadership, as you can see, we've given examples. We were very fortunate that our leadership, from the initial starting point, wanted it to be diverse, wanted to promote mentorship, wanted to promote an open environment, asking questions, educating people. So from the beginning, hands down, leadership was there, right? We've talked about how to create an open and welcoming environment, just the ability to ask questions, just the ability to know that your voice can be heard. And I only gave one example of how, from an economical perspective, we were able to listen and take action. But there are examples from everything from Black Lives Matter, our Black members saying that they want to be heard. They wanted us to take action around COVID. 2 of our youngest members came to the leadership and said, hey, we feel there's a lot of anxiety can we do more to reduce that anxiety? We took action, right? We don't always know if things are going to work out, but we don't let that limit us. We move forward, we persevere, we take the action, we test, and we learn. As Michelle said, we also celebrate differences. I mean, we are extremely diverse. Asians, Latinos, Black, name it, we have it. And we, yes, white too. We celebrate it all. We celebrate it all, and we find a way to, even from a social perspective, like Michelle said, even some social outings to celebrate the diversity that we have. Also, the allies, Michelle, key point. We wouldn't even be here without the allies. They're critically important. Now, maybe in your organization, you may need them, you may not. As Michelle said, just look for them. Or if you're in a position of privilege, look to organizations like Tri-Latino to partner with and work with. Especially with this year, we had 2 individuals reach out to us to ask to say, hey, I want to be an ally for Tri-Latino. How can we make this happen?
How can we help?
Yes.
How can we help? I have access. What do you need? And that's what drives this. And that's, talk about a way to give back. This is how you ensure that as a society, we all move forward.
Yes. And then last but not least, listen actively, right? You have people who are saying things in your pod, in your community. Listen actively and don't take it for granted. If they're saying something, like I said, whether it's related to the economy, whether it's related to social injustice, whether it's related to any topic, people are constantly talking. There's a delicate balance, but you want to make sure that people feel like they're heard, they have a voice, and that you should be able to take action to address it. So that concludes our presentation. We hope that you've learned something or gained some insight, and we'll turn it over to the moderator and see if there are any other questions that we could potentially answer for anyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You guys did an amazing job, and I love what your organization is doing. And just to kind of recap some of your pillars, at least what I heard, and for those of you who might be just joining, you built your organization on leadership because it happens from the top down. A welcoming environment. I can't express to you how important that is, especially for minority athletes to feel important and welcome and safe in their environments and in their tribe space. And uplifting the community. Who doesn't want to be uplifted and celebrated and supported? I think the word is muerte.
Muévete.
Is that the
Muévete.
Muévete.
Muerte. Yes. And a shared mindset, and you guys celebrate each other's differences. And you wrapped it up by saying we got to reflect and take an audit and make sure that we listen actively to others. I think that is so key and so important, because if we understand, then we can better center around what we need to do to help uplift our brothers and sisters. So we'll start off with the questions. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Ian M says, when you received, and we'll say you received a grant from USAT to subsidize your club members' training, can you give us a couple examples of what that included?
Sure. So for 2020, it was actually a shorter season. It was not your typical, the way that we normally break it out, it runs a lot longer. We actually start in the spring and then we end right before Labor Day. So because of COVID-19 and being that we are in the epicenter of the outbreak, right, of the pandemic, being in New York, we were not able to start until just after the 4th of July. So what that meant was that it was a shorter training, if you will. It ran a little bit longer. It ran right into the fall. But what we also did in terms of the efficiencies, economies of scale, I mean, we have to be realistic that like the cost for access to these amazing coaches and whatnot, we did it in such a way that the person who received a subsidy was able to receive the entire program. Like they received all of the disciplines, as opposed to it just being like, well, you can only have the run or you can only do the bike. Like you need to choose one. No, they received it in a full package of being able to take advantage of the great programming.
And what better that was so probably beneficial for them because they were able to hone in on those skills during a time where they had plenty of time to do so. Transitioning into this question, John W. says he's a physician and a coach. How did you overcome the COVID concerns given the New York closures?
Yeah. So I can answer that. I think that, and thank you. That's a really great question because that's something that, like any organization, collectively we had to address that. And I think that, before just giving the outright answer, which was, we followed the guidelines by the federal government, it really, again, comes down to the community. We had conversations with the board about all the risks that were involved. And like I said, having a diverse board is critically important because in there, one of the things that we really didn't talk about was the mental health and the anxiety that people were feeling. That was not one of the things that we really mentioned. But when we were talking about the programming, the board, some of our members had very diverse views, ranging from like, hey, I've had family members that were affected. I can't go into the city. Other people saying, I'm not taking public transportation for the rest of the year, so count me out. So it wasn't an easy way to do this, right? But part of that started with the board, and then we looped in our coaches. We actually scheduled a coaches conference call after the board had kind of shared their point of view. We brought in the coaches. We talked about what their concerns were. Together, we decided that, okay, if we are to do this, the only way to do this was in a safe manner, which was, again, adhering to social distancing, ensuring that we were covered up. So we were always covered with our faces and that we were going to have social distance. And then also what we did do this year, we had a limit or a cap size of people that could participate. So for like run, I think we said no more than 25 people. For cycling, we actually even chose a location outside of the city. So we decided to go to an outdoor location that was an hour away from the city. So there was a lot of adapting that had to happen, but always safety and security of our membership was at the forefront. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. As they say, life is one big transition, and that's exactly what we've had to do this year, is just transition from one phase to another. And I guess if we look at it with a positive outlook, the beauty is we will continue to have to transition. And that's what makes us great, is that we're able to transition quickly and move whichever way we need to go. So thank you for that. Chrissy Carroll asked, can you both speak a bit more about how your funding works as nonprofits to support the programs you offer? I know you mentioned the USAT grant. Is the rest fundraising?
So various sources. There is the so let's talk about what the expenses are, right? The large expenses are the coaching aspect of it. And so when our members pay, the way that we look at our pricing structure, our structure is essentially, it's a pass through. We're not here to really to make money. I mean, that we need reserves, yes, we do, but we price it in such a way that we're covering cost of the coaching. And so that's where we look to it from a scale perspective. As it pertains to fundraising for a program like the juniors, or to have a future of other ways to award scholarships or subsidies for people in need, we are doing fundraising. And so we will use vehicles like the New York City Triathlon as one of our big fundraising opportunities. We will look to grants. One of our members on the board has been a huge champion of really driving that. So we are getting better at making sure that we're dividing and conquering. While some of us may be focused on the operations, others on the actual programming, there is someone who is really that driving force behind how we receive other income, right? Or other ways of revenue, so that we can continue to provide these programs at extremely affordable prices. So it's a multitude of ways that we fund the programming.
And even the members like Hector,
Oh, we will have members that will come to us out of, unsolicited. And so we say this to our members all the time. You have an idea, bring it to us. Bring it to us because we love to just like get equally creative about it. So we had a member who was on this kick of, everyone's been training at home on these platforms. And he said, I'm going to take on this insane terrain and this insane course that was going to do, like, I think it was a total of, he had in mind that he was going to do it under 14 hours. And he did. He managed to do it. He turned it into a fundraiser. So it was a donation to the cause that he then in turn donated it right back into the organization for us to continue to have this program around.
And corporate matching.
Then we have their corporate matches. So we do always ask our members who, if where they work, if their employer does have corporate matching, so that also helps. Any little bit helps. So if you'd like to make a donation, please feel free to visit our website at trilatino.org. There's a donate button there.
You took the words out of my mouth. I wrote down to say, well, if people wanted to give, how do they do? So be sure, maybe if you can send that to us, I can send that out to the group to make sure that people can know how to find you guys to give.
Got it.
So I have another question for you all. What would you say if someone wants to be a part of your team as an ally, but is afraid of how they will be perceived?
Well, and I think that, we've experienced this, and, it usually has happened so we've gotten two statements. Number one is always, I'm not Latino, can I join? Of course, hands down, anyone can join. If you see our membership, like Michelle said, Latino, Black, white, Asian, we don't care. As long as you're all about wanting to train with the family, trying to train and be encouraging and have a healthy mindset, or just even have our co-founder used to say, if you have good vibes. If you have good vibes, then just come at it. We love you, we want you in our life, and that's it. So usually it comes across that way, like, can I join Tri-Latino? Hands down. Allies, we want to partner. We're never going to turn anyone down. There's nothing in our organization or anyone who, I really do say we are extremely open that anyone can come. So if there's any allies who want to partner with us, feel free to reach out. We had an athlete reach out a couple months ago, specifically saying, hey, I want to be an ally. What do I have to do? And we'll have an open conversation about that. Like, hey, these are the areas where we think you can help. And we'll work together. That's all we want to do, is we just want to work with people who believe in the mission. So I hope that answers the question.
I think that the part about the perceived, how will it be perceived? It'll be perceived as goodwill.
Yeah.
It's going to be perceived as goodwill. So if you're open to it, if you're interested, reach out. We'd love to have you on board.
And only bring your good vibes. So if you got good vibes, join up with them. Can you describe your mentorship program and how it works with other clubs and how they can learn from your work?
So the biggest component of our mentorship program is by way of our youth program. So with our juniors, once we've had the cohort selected for that particular school year, then it's anywhere between 15 to 18 kids. So we look to 15 to 18 adults so that there could be a one-on-one relationship there to help the kid with, the basics in terms of like terminology. They're going to hear words that are extremely technical that they're not going to be experienced with. So the mentor doesn't necessarily need to be a person who podiums themselves. No, it's just someone who has gone through the program and now understands what it takes to pack your bag for race day, or to have that meal, to carb load the night or 2 nights before the race. So it could be anywhere there. It could also be, hey, I'm about to graduate and I'm thinking about doing this versus that. So it is that dialogue there. That is our biggest driver in the way that we provide that outreach between an adult and a youth. Now, there is also mentorship that happens at the adult level, at the peer-to-peer level. Partly, I think a good component of it happens organically in the way that you are meeting some other amazing people, professionals. Like you, we have such an extensive array of people from their own professional backgrounds within our club that next thing you know, you end up with a mentor that happened to come out of this organization. So there is that. And then there's the mentorship for the person who needs a little bit more coaching, or I should say a peer point of view for prepping for a race. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you so much. And for our last question, how have you been able to retain or reach out to your partners or team members who haven't felt comfortable participating during this season? And has your retention, what was your retention rate?
Yeah, so very good question. I would say that definitely our numbers have not been the same as we've seen them historically. But what we have done actively is we have had in some sort of a check-in. So one of the initiatives that we did over the summer, the board collectively, we went through the most recent, I want to say maybe the last 2 to 3 years of our database. And we literally just divide and conquer. You saw we have about 7 people on the board. We all literally took up the phone and either by text or personally calling, we were checking in on people. And that's really what it is. And as a matter of fact, sometimes it also happens in another way. Members will come to us and say, hey, I heard so-and-so is going through a hardship, or I heard so-and-so wasn't able to participate this year. So we make it a point. The board is really good. The ladies are phenomenal in just being able to keep in touch with other people, and so do the members. So I feel like, while our numbers were down, and I think a lot of it plays into it, right? This year, like you said, we have to be flexible. Everything from hardship, everything from people's personal anxiety levels, like we can't control that. We can only control our ability to continue to build and foster an inclusive environment and hope that at some point in time people will join us. But we are proactive about getting out there, touching base with individuals and just checking up on them.
That's so good. I know here in DC, we've had that challenge of just trying to keep everyone connected. But the fact that you guys are making those touch points, when things are back open to normal, they'll remember that because people just want to know how much you care. So thank you so much for caring for your teammates. Thank you for sharing with us today. Everybody send out good vibes and a round of applause. We appreciate you guys and keep doing what you're doing, Tri-Latino.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're
Bye.
welcome. You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that means we have a little bit of a break. So we will be back here promptly at 11:10. So be sure to go to your break, do what you got to do, and we'll see you back at 11:10.